Welcome to the glittering yet dangerous world of Versailles Palace, where power, beauty, and intrigue determined who thrived and who fell. Today, we unravel the story of Jeanne Bécu, better known as Madame du Barry, the last official mistress of King Louis XV. Her life reads like a novel, born into poverty. She rose to the highest ranks of French society, wielding influence at one of the most dazzling courts in history. Yet her glittering rise ended in tragedy on the guillotine during the French Revolution. This is not just the story of one woman, it's the story of 18th century France, the decadence of kings, the dangers of politics, the storm of revolution that swept everything away. Chapter 1. Humble beginnings. Jeanne Bécu entered the world on August 19, 1743. In the small town of Vaucouleurs in Lorraine, she was the illegitimate daughter of Jeanne Bécu, a seamstress. Her father was never formally identified. Some say he was a monk, others a nobleman, but the truth remains uncertain. Her mother worked hard. Jeanne's earliest years were simple and modest. By all accounts, she was a bright, lively child with striking beauty that would later become her greatest asset. At age 3, her mother took her to Paris, hoping for better opportunities. Jeanne was placed in a convent school where she received basic education. The nuns found her charming but mischievous, full of energy and curiosity. While other girls dreamed of marriage or piety, Jeanne seemed destined for something different. By her teens, Jeanne's beauty was already attracting attention. With golden hair, sparkling blue eyes, and delicate features, she stood out in the bustling streets of Paris. Her beauty was not cold or distant, it was warm, playful, and irresistible. At just 15, she began working in a dress shop, learning the latest fashions. Soon, she found work as a companion to wealthy women, accompanying them to salons and parties. This position exposed her to high society, the world of aristocrats, politics, and power. It was a world that would one day be hers. Chapter 2. The road to Versailles, Paris. In the 1760s was alive with art, philosophy, and scandal. Jeanne quickly learned how to charm influential men. She was witty, graceful, and knew how to make people feel important. It was during this time that she met Jean-Baptiste du Barry, a wealthy adventurer and notorious gambler. He recognized Jeanne's potential not just as a beautiful woman, but as someone who could captivate the king himself. Du Barry introduced her to powerful circles, grooming her for Versailles. But there was a problem. Only women of noble status could become official mistresses to the king. To solve this, Jeanne was married, at least on paper, to Du Barry's brother, Guillaume du Barry. This marriage gave her the title Comtesse du Barry. Now she had the name, the title, and the beauty. All she needed was the king's attention. In 1768, Jeanne was finally introduced to Louis XV. The king, then in his late 50s, is known for his charm, but also his weariness. He had ruled France for decades, and though still powerful, he was growing old and disillusioned. When Louis met Jeanne, he was enchanted. She was unlike the court ladies, fresh, youthful, full of laughter. Soon, Jeanne became his official mistress. Versailles had a new queen of influence. Chapter 3. Life as Royal Mistress. The position of Maître Centaure, Chief Royal Mistress, was one of immense privilege and danger. Madame de Pompadour, who preceded Jeanne, had wielded enormous power. Now it was Du Barry's turn. At Versailles, Jeanne lived in unimaginable luxury. She was given apartments near the king's chambers, filled with gilded furniture, silks, and art. She wore gowns of the finest fabrics, and Louis lavished her with jewels. But Versailles was a viper's nest. Nobles despised her for her humble origins. Pamphlets mocked her as a common courtesan who had bewitched the king. Satirical poems and cartoons spread, attacking her morality. Even the young Dauphine, Marie Antoinette, disapproved of her. At first, Marie Antoinette refused even to acknowledge Du Barry, causing tension at court. It took pressure from Austria, her home country, to finally force her to speak a single sentence to Jeanne, remarks so cold it became legendary. Despite the scorn, Madame du Barry held firm. She was not a politician like Pompadour, but she knew how to soothe the king's moods. She was his companion, his comfort, his joy in old age. Foreign ambassadors sought her favor. Ministers feared her influence. Her word in the king's ear could secure positions, fortunes, and even peace treaties. Yet beneath the glitter, danger loomed. Louis XV's health was failing, and with his death, Jeanne's entire world would collapse. Chapter 4. The Death of Louis XVI. April 1774. Louis XV fell gravely ill with smallpox. Versailles panicked. As the king grew weaker, the courtiers turned their eyes toward the future. The young Dauphin, soon to be Louis XVI and his queen. Marie Antoinette Jeanne remained by the king's side, but her enemies saw their chance. When Louis XV died on May 10, 1774, Madame du Barry was ordered to leave Versailles immediately. Her glittering reign was over in an instant. The young royal couple despised her and wasted no time in banishing her to a convent. After several months, she was released and allowed to live at her estate. Louveciennes, outside Paris, she was wealthy, comfortable, and still beautiful. But she was no longer the king's mistress. She was a relic of the old regime. Chapter 5. Exile and life beyond the court and exile. Madame du Barry lived quietly but luxuriously. Her estate at Louveciennes became a salon of art and culture. She collected paintings, entertained guests, and continued to live as a grand lady, though without political power. Surprisingly, she even showed kindness. Unlike many courtiers, she sometimes interceded for others, using her influence to help those in trouble. She also maintained friendships and correspondences, revealing a softer side than her reputation suggested. But the world outside was changing rapidly. The Enlightenment was spreading ideas of equality and liberty. Discontent was growing in France. By the late 1780s, the revolution was at hand. Chapter 6. The French Revolution. When the French Revolution broke out in 1789, Madame du Barry faced a dilemma. Many aristocrats fled, but she stayed in France. Perhaps she believed her distance from politics would protect her. Perhaps she thought her charm could save her, just as it once had. At first, she managed to avoid the worst, but her wealth and jewels drew attention. Revolutionaries accused her of sending riches abroad to support emigres, whether true or not. It sealed her fate. In 1793, during the Reign of Terror, she was arrested. The Revolutionary Tribunal charged her with treason. Her trial was swift, her guilt predetermined. On December 8, 1793, Jeanne Bécu, Comtesse du Barry, was taken to the guillotine. Unlike some who met death with stoicism, she panicked, pleaded, and begged for her life. Her cries echoed through the crowd. At just 50 years old, she was executed. Her head displayed as yet another symbol of the revolution's fury against the old regime. Chapter 7. Legacy. Madame du Barry remains a controversial figure. To some, she was nothing more than a courtesan who manipulated a weary king. To others, she was a woman of survival, a girl of humble birth, who rose to unimaginable heights in a society stacked against her. Her story illustrates the fragility of power at Versailles. One day you could be the most influential woman in France. The next you could be cast aside, or worse, today. Her name stands beside those of Madame de Pompadour and Marie Antoinette as symbols of France's opulent, doomed monarchy. So what do you think? Was Madame du Barry a villain who exploited her beauty for power? Or was she a victim of a ruthless system that consumed even its brightest stars? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating women, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from the shadows of the past.